Hi, everybody. I'm Bill Hague, Executive Vice President at Magid, and I'm joined with Ellen Crooke, Senior Vice President at TEGNA, and Sean McLaughlin, Vice President of News at Scripps Howard. And this is actually part one of two. We wanted to make sure we gave proper time to the topic of trust. And that's what we're going to talk today about. And it's trust of news sources, local news sources, TV, radio focus, but also print, and the challenges that are out there. Ellen, I'm just going to jump in with you right away. How did this study begin? And I need to mention that the RTDNA trade organization sponsored it. You and Sean are on the board of RTDNA.
Yes. And, RTDNA is always working to, help improve our industry, to help our newsrooms. And the number one issue that our newsrooms are facing is the lack of trust. We hear it every day. It's affecting our democracy and our country. It's affecting our industry. And one of the things that's really sad, it's affecting our journalists' passion for their profession, to know that people don't trust the work that they're doing. So a great group with Sean and other people representing other news organizations across the country created a trust committee where we just focused on this. And the one thing we all agreed on, we didn't need another study that told us that trust was fading and that trust is a problem. We needed more of an action item. We wanted to hear from audience members, what can we do to make a difference and to make you trust us more? And that's where we came to you.
Yeah, no, I love it. And speaking of the voice of the consumer, we will have with this video a couple of examples where, Scripps and TEGNA and other partners with RTDNA actually went out and talked to local news consumers. So we encourage all of you to listen to some of those videos because it really adds some great context. Sean, talk about the process of us working together and this study.
Well, I think the thing that's clear is that attitudes are changing quickly. I mean, I think that's what's really, just in the last couple of years, we've seen so much change in this space. And I think, when we were in the early stages of talking about this idea through the RTDNA, it became clear we need to understand what's going on in the minds of the consumer right now. And again, to Ellen's point, we know there's a trust issue. We don't need to hear more of that. But what in their eyes would begin to fix it? Recognizing this isn't going to be an overnight fix, but we needed a deep level of understanding. We needed, it's complicated because we serve the whole nation. So, we had to try and get enough geography and get into different areas, and knowing that these areas, are different in different places. But, I've worked with, like you said, we've worked together for a while. Through some of our other work, we've come right up to this line of recognizing that there's something going on here in the trust space. And so, when Ellen and I began talking about where do we go to get this information, you guys were one of the first ones to come up on the list.
Great. Yeah, no, and you're right. I mean, all of us have worked on a lot of research projects in local markets as well as nationally. And this is something that we've heard a lot about. No one has ever done a study like this, right? And we need to give RTDNA a lot of credit for investing in it. You for putting the time. I don't think I've partnered with anyone and spent as much time on a single study with as many people. Every stone was unturned. And to your point, Ellen, this was really about building a roadmap. We get that there's a trust issue with American consumers and local news and national news providers, but what do you do about it? And that's what we're gonna jump in. One of the things that we did at the very start is we listed a number of items that impact trust for a local news provider, and we had 24 different elements that we tested, and using advanced analytics was able to distill them into 4 key elements. And in today's video, each of you are going to take 2 of those and talk about them and just how you see them, but also how your newsrooms are going to use those insights to impact the consumer. So one thing I want to say up front is with these 4 elements, they are going to seem obvious. They seem obvious to everyone we talk to with this research. And what's funny is they do seem simple and elemental and foundational, but the issue is consumers don't give local news outlets credit for it. So let's jump into the first one. Be right. Ellen.
Be right. And you can hear news managers all over the country saying, well, tell me something I don't know. Of course I know I have to be right. But what we heard was they don't always think that we are. And they want us to be more forward to show us, how did you get that information? Who did you talk to? They want us to be more transparent. We have to, things that we took for granted in the past, that we can just provide information and people are going to believe it, those days are gone. We have to take more work, and it's being boldly right to really show people what we've done, to take more steps, asking tough questions, which means we have to be more confident in our knowledge of the story, to be able to hold people in power accountable, to have more great local experts as part of our team so that we can be have more depth on a particular story. It's about focusing on showing the amount of time, the amount of work we've done. We talked to one audience member who says, I hear something on the local news and I go online to test and see if they're right. We have to have that in the back of our heads, to just anymore just assume that they will believe us because we put it out there. Those days are gone. We have to show our work more. We have to show more depth. We have to follow up on stories instead of just showing one story and then leaving it alone. We have to really have more depth, more concepts, and really try and prove to something that we used to take for granted, that our work is accurate.
Yeah, excuse me. And this notion of being right, it's in every story, in every newscast, every day, right? Back to your point of being overt and explicit. Sean, the next one is be your community. I know you and your team at Scripps is doing some innovative work in some markets about really embracing that sense of community. How did you interpret this be your community element?
Well, and this is another one where we think, well, no kidding. But, the fact of the matter is there's a gap. There's a gap between what we think we're doing every day and the consumers who consume our products, what they see us doing. And, a lot of the centers around expertise and how well do you know your community? It's one thing to say, yeah, we know our community, but how do you demonstrate that through the journalism you do? How do you demonstrate? How do you provide the kind of context to important stories? But I think what this really comes down to is understanding. How much listening do we do? I think, that's one of the biggest questions I think we've been asking ourselves since we got this information back. Do we listen enough? Are we really in touch with what's important in the communities we serve? I think what we hear back from people is they don't necessarily see that. And so I think, again, the word you're going to hear a lot through this is, overt, be big, be really direct. You got to show a lot more than you used to. There's also how reflective are we of the community we're serving? I mean, do we have diverse journalists on our staff? Do we look like the community? There's an immediate disconnect if I tune into the local news and it doesn't look like the community I live in, or if I don't feel represented as a person living in a community. If I turn a local newscast on and I see a bunch of people who don't look like me, or I feel have a connection with me, I'm going to immediately start to wonder about the credibility, and it'll affect the way I trust it. And I think the last piece of this that I heard was, around solutions. We do a lot of highlighting problems. And, I think, yeah, that's part of our journalistic role. But I think the harder part for us is, what's the answer? What are other people doing? What are other communities trying? What else is out there? How can we work towards solutions to make our communities better? And I think all of that, helps, paint this picture of a much more sense of immersed as we work to be our community.
And as a group, you bring up solutions. We talked a lot about this, right? And it's not just about solving a problem. The elderly woman who gets taken advantage of by a used car dealer, right? That's not what we're talking about. That's important, but it's not finding the solution, but it's also talking to the people who are in charge of solutions, right? Which I think is a really interesting fashioning of being your community. Okay, Ellen, you're next up with Be Objective.
This one touched a nerve. This one, when we went out to talk to people in person, they couldn't stop talking about it. This is the one where we got the most audio. People are frustrated. And our newsrooms hear a lot of the people on the extremes, right, of an opinion. And of all the things we tested, I think this one was like, above 89% said, I just want it straight. I don't want your opinion. I want to know that you're being fair, that you're being fair to all the people who are involved, or all the sides that are involved in this story. Now, that doesn't mean that we have to share sides when it comes to lies or people who have racist opinions or, or following lies. It's not about that. And I think that sometimes we get stuck on that. It's about the everyday stories that we're doing, whether it be about fixing my street or things that are happening in my schools or having to do with my taxes. Are you being as objective and holding powerful accountable? And are you showing me all that you're doing to give me all sides of a story? They do not want to see our personal opinions on social media, in their newscasts, and people are passionate about this. And again, we believe we're objective. We believe we do this every day. We have work to do consistently on every story that we do to show what process we went through to make sure that we're showing multiple sides of an issue.
Thanks, Ellen. Sean, she brings up a great point about social media and the impact on reporters and anchors' objectivity. We're going to now focus on the fourth element, which is be real. And there's a fine line between being real and sharing things on social media that may or may not be supporting that. Let's talk about how you've interpreted be real with your stations and your news directors.
Yeah, and this is another one. There's a lot of tension. I'm sure Ellen's run into the same thing I have. You have a lot of aspiring young journalists who are passionate about what they do, and they want to get out on social media and give their opinions on things. And it's like, whoa, again, and this is where it's important to recognize in the eyes of the public, that's a no-go. And we have to recognize that our credibility is at stake there. Listen, it's a real challenge. We encourage people on one hand, hey, we need you to be real. We need you to be authentic. We need you to be human. But don't share your opinions or don't talk about these things that could put that at risk. And I think that is a genuine struggle, not just for the journalists who are doing the journalism, but for the managers who are managing the process. I think it's tricky. But I think there is this whole idea of another moment of honesty, right? When we got this back, and there's a couple pieces of research, Bill, you and I've talked about over the last couple of years, where you get it back and it's like, wow, this is a little bit of a punch to the gut. Mm-hmm. We've kind of become caricatures of ourselves. I mean, people imitate us, the way we talk, the way we look. You may think you're authentic, but when it's, good evening, the pose, the facial expression, the tone, I mean, it's just a non-starter for a lot of people. So I think, trying to be a genuine, caring, real human being who lives in and cares about the community every bit as much as the person who's consuming our products is so important. There's a couple different elements of this that I think are really, really important. And I thought the one that really spoke to me was around competence. And this whole idea of, you got to be a professional. You got to have it together. If you're on the air and you're fumbling and bumbling or not prepared or don't look right or don't look professional, that hurts you. It takes away from your credibility. And again, this is that tension. Again, be real. Hey, I want to look, more casual, more comfortable. There's a line. And I think, the takeaway I had here is we got to be really careful about taking things too far on that. And again, for managers, we got to address mistakes. If we see people who have performance challenges, don't look prepared, don't look professional, we got to be on top of that, because as you'll see later, one person who's off base can hurt the integrity of the entire operation. And then the last one that I thought was part of the same thing, that another moment of honesty. I don't know that our industry's ever been great about owning the mistakes we make. Hey, okay, let's bury that correction down, toward the bottom of the newscast. And what people are telling us, hey, it's on you. You screwed up and you need to own it. Hey, if you're going to hold other people accountable, you need to hold yourself accountable. And that's the individual journalists who contribute to the products, and it's the organization overall. So this is one where, for everybody, seems obvious. Take a step back and listen to what people are telling us, and then ask yourself the hard questions. Are you set up to really do these things?
Yeah, and I'll just add to that, Sean. It's so well said. And there was one woman that we talked to who said, I think being real means that you care about what you're telling us. And that really struck with me. And I challenge all of our news leaders, watch a half-hour newscast, right? And do you get the sense that the people who are providing the news are showing humanity? And that's that fine balance. Be objective, but at the same time, does it seem like they're just spewing out information and that they don't care about the people they're talking about? They don't care about the problems that they're reading and reporting on. And that is such a fine line, but I know our journalists in our newsrooms can handle that polarity of be objective, but also show that you care what you're talking about and what you're reporting on. And that really struck me.
Thank you both. There's a lot more here that we're going to address in this next video. Ellen and Sean, thank you both, and we'll talk again here shortly.